What is up, everybody, and welcome to CTW Live. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo, and tonight, first of all, thank you all for joining me here tonight on CTW Live. But tonight, we're going to be going over quite an interesting topic when it comes to the NBA and the summer of the NBA, right? Every summer, every offseason, this is an interesting topic. We're going to be going over the biggest winners and losers from the 2025 NBA draft as we look back at the 2025 NBA draft after Summer League. So this is post Summer League. So for anybody watching in the future, this is post Summer League. This is not quite right after the draft as the date across the top of the screen indicates. However, post Summer League, this is the list, right? This is my personal list, right? Subjective list of the biggest winners and losers from the 2025 NBA draft. First of all, I got to say, during this live, right, during this live, there will be takes that age like milk. All right. There will be takes that age like milk. Inevitably, these kind of things happen when talking about the NBA draft and talking about really any move in the NBA, right? When you're putting your stamp on whether or not you like certain teams' moves, that's inevitably going to derive takes that might age a little bit like milk. You know, other takes might age like fine wine. I'm sure we're going to have a couple of those in here as well. But some of these takes, I'm sure somewhere along the way, I'm going to gloss over a second round pick. I'm going to gloss over a player that becomes a really, really great player in the NBA, if not a really good player in the NBA. And you never know, there could be another Nikola Jokic in this year's second round. Nikola Jokic, he went 41st overall to the Denver Nuggets back in 2014, and now look at Nikola Jokic. I mean, he could easily be the MVP every single year this decade so far. Nikola Jokic, in my estimate, right? My own estimate. I mean, he has 3 MVPs already, but maybe should have won 5 this decade. I'm just saying, maybe should have won 5. Certainly a player could exist like that in the 2025 NBA draft, particularly in the second round or even in the later rounds. However, that being said, we are going to go through this team by team, and we're going to break it down team by team. And generally, I wrote down some criteria for winners and losers, but don't need to necessarily get too into that because I really believe I'm putting my subjective stamp on all of this. And when I look at my subjective stamp, right, I try to make it as objective as possible. But these are my own personal. This is my own personal analysis on what exactly went down in the NBA draft and who exited the NBA draft winners and who exited the NBA draft losers on draft night. So, without further ado, let's get into it. And we're going to break this down team by team. All right, team by team, division by division. So, we're not going to go pick by pick. We're not going to do any of that. And I'm not going to make a list. I'm not going to go, here are the winners over here and here are the losers over here. You can decipher that as the list is formed throughout this. The list will be formed throughout this live. However, I'm not just going to give it out winners, losers. I'm going to go through every team here. And basically, at the end of the analysis, or even at the beginning of the analysis, I'm going to say, well, this team won on draft night or this team lost on draft night. So let's get into this. First, let's talk about none other than the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics, once the defending champions in the 24-25 season. However, they were not able to repeat, as we all know, in 2025. That being said, the Celtics did make a first round selection in Hugo Gonzalez, 28th overall. The Celtics also selected Amari Williams, 46th overall in the second round, and then Max Shulga, 57th overall later on in the second round. So the Boston Celtics, just to dive into these draft picks real quick, because let's face it, we've here on CTW, right? We've talked about Hugo Gonzalez, Amari Williams, and Max Shulga quite a bit. All right, quite a bit. We did post games on them. I mean, when they were drafted, we were there reacting live. We talked about these guys quite a bit, but talking about them even more so now. The Celtics, were they winners or losers on draft night? Okay, when it gets down to it, I would have to say the Celtics. I know we have the Celtics. I mean, here it is. Oh, you see it everywhere. It's everywhere here. So the biased opinion is going to come out. But I believe the Celtics for what they were able to do on draft night, particularly in the second round, right? Amari Williams and Max Shulga in the second round, and what Amari Williams displayed in Summer League. The Celtics came out relative winners on draft night just from the sheer fact they were able to add something to the team, right? And they actually retained their first round pick in a season where the first round pick didn't matter all that much in a championship contending season. People could have argued the Celtics maybe they should have looked to move off that 2025 first round pick in a season where they were competing for the championship. Well, the Celtics didn't. They end up with Hugo Gonzalez, and I'm going to bring this up, folks. All right, because this could actually decipher whether or not the Celtics are definitive winners or losers in the NBA draft or coming out of the 2025 NBA draft. Did the Boston Celtics, all right, will it be seen in time? How do I phrase this? How do I correctly phrase this? Will it be seen as a massive mistake in time that the Celtics passed up on Liam McNeely for Hugo Gonzalez? It's a possibility. It's 100% a possibility that in time, the Celtics passing up on Liam McNeely for Hugo Gonzalez will look a little questionable. All right. Because Liam McNeely was the surefire prospect still on the board at the 28th overall pick for the Celtics. And I know a lot of Celtics Nation up there in New England. All right. When New England, that area, a lot of viewers of the UConn Huskies men's basketball team, right? Liam McNeely playing for the Huskies. I'm sure a lot of viewers up in New England, a lot of Celtics fans up in New England. I mean, we were on the broadcast as well. We saw the comments. We were even in here, talking. We had 6 of us in here. The conversation was almost centered on Liam McNeely when it came to that 28th pick. Now, again, the big man core and drafting a big man was very much a priority at that time for Celtic Nation. But when there was a prospect on the board, as there was in Liam McNeely, who was projected as a maybe potential lottery pick at his height, and most draft boards had him just outside of the lottery, right? But when there was a player like that at that selection, the need goes a little bit to the wayside, right? Oh, we need a center. That need should go a little bit to the wayside, and ultimately it turns into, well, who's the best available? And we also know that might not have been the point of analysis for the Celtics, or what brought the Celtics to drafting Gonzalez over McNeely, because there were rumors after the draft that the Boston Celtics were looking for a player with that 28th overall pick that would take the lowest rookie scale contract possible for a first round pick. And that was ultimately Hugo Gonzalez coming over from Real Madrid, now over to the NBA with the Boston Celtics. Did that play a massive factor in the Celtics drafting Gonzalez over McNeely? Possibly just the salary, but looking at the salaries at the end of the first round, it shouldn't matter that much, right? If McNeely is that much better than Gonzalez, or ultimately a team values McNeely ahead of Gonzalez, a team's going to go ahead and make that pick and say, well, hell with the salary, because we're saving a couple $1,000 here or there. And when you're talking about the rookie scale salaries, it is in the hundreds of thousands more so than the millions, right? They're not saving necessarily millions, but hundreds of thousands, right? At that point in time, Gonzalez at Summer League, it's very clear McNeely outperformed Gonzalez. That being said, McNeely is a different player than Gonzalez. And they're the same age. They're both 19 years old, found that out during the draft. But Gonzalez is more of a defensive oriented pest on that end of the floor, right? And offensively, his game needs a little bit of polishing, mostly with the shot, right? The ball handling, just being able to take care of the ball. Really struggled with the ball in his hands. Hugo Gonzalez did at the Summer League. It didn't look all that great when he'd be doubled, or defenders would increase pressure on Gonzalez. It wouldn't always look that great. And most of the time, a lot of loose ball situations, a lot of get the ball out of my hands real quick. And what we saw out of Gonzalez from an offensive standpoint, just very raw. Okay, very raw. First game was all right. The rest of the games, not so great offensively for Gonzalez. That being said, defensively, there's a lot to like from Hugo Gonzalez. That might be the opposite for Liam McNeely. Liam McNeely, offensively, I can see him being a Max Strus level player, but I don't necessarily see him owning the same shot per se. He might be able I mean, he might be a nice 3-point shooter in the league, Liam McNeely, but I'm not sure he's going to be as efficient as Max Strus when it comes to shooting from the perimeter. That being said, McNeely does remind me a little bit of a player like Max Strus, but there's going to be some defensive trade-off with McNeely. McNeely's going to be a little less, he's less athletic, because if we're comparing Gonzalez to McNeely here, which is what I've basically turned this into, and that's what's going to decide for whether or not I believe the Celtics, did they win or lose on draft night? Did the Celtics accidentally pick a guy like Ugo Gonzalez over a Liam McNeely or even a Rasheer Fleming in the second round, right? You look right at the beginning of the second round. But the Celtics, comparing Gonzalez to Liam McNeely, McNeely is definitely less athletic than Gonzalez. He's a little bit bigger, but less athletic. And he's just not as defensively inclined as a guy like Hugo Gonzalez. Gonzalez is definitely something on the defensive end of the floor. If Gonzalez never comes along offensively, there will always be something defensively for Gonzalez. Now, what we do know about Gonzalez is that offense is going to have to come along in order for him to actually receive minutes in the NBA, because some of the summer league minutes were a little rough out in Vegas. That being said, McNeely didn't look as rough out in Vegas. There are some trade-offs in his game, and it's what do you like, one or the other? Do you like McNeely and his offensive game? And McNeely, when I see on the offensive end of the floor for McNeely, ball handling, he's not a massive creator, but I think he's almost like a Con Knipple. He's almost like a Con Knipple type of a player where he can just kind of win within the margins, and he just can attack where ultimately on the floor he knows he can attack, right? That's a huge part about basketball, is knowing your spots. Right? It's knowing where you can attack on the floor, knowing your position on the floor, knowing your matchups, and when you have a favorable advantage over your defender. I think McNeely has a heightened awareness of that and a sense of that, and that's the type of player he's going to be in the NBA. But ultimately, this is about Hugo Gonzalez and the Celtics. Would you pick Gonzalez over McNeely right now? I don't know if a lot of people are doing that, which, if you look at that alone, people could term this a loss for the Celtics in the 2025 NBA draft. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. But you have to consider the other picks for the Celtics: Amari Williams and Max Shulga, 46 and 57. Those guys, Max Shulga already on a two-way contract, Amari Williams awaiting a potential two-way contract. Amari Williams showed out. Arguably, out of the three, Amari Williams was the most impressive at Summer League, which there's something to be said about that when you have a 46th overall pick performing at Summer League the way he was. And we don't know, Amari Williams likely going to be on a two-way contract with the Celtics, probably won't play a ton of minutes with the C's this season. But overall, the fact the Celtics added something to their roster, right? This could have been a season where, or this could have been an offseason or an NBA draft rather, where the Celtics before the NBA draft couldn't have, okay, this could have been an offseason where the Celtics, or particularly an NBA draft, where the Celtics coming into this offseason, they didn't have a pick. If the Celtics would have traded their pick away, knowing, oh, we're competing for the 2025 NBA title, the Celtics may not have had a pick on draft night. And the Celtics coming into draft night owned 28 and 32, eventually traded away 32 for 46, 57, and I believe another pick later on in the future. But considering the Celtics came away with three players, and two players they could slot into two-way spots, and another one who they hope can grow into a complementary piece over time, you'd have to consider the Celtics relative winners on draft night compared to what the outcome could have been, which is the Celtics come away with zero players. I mean, imagine that kind of offseason. The Celtics don't win the championship. Tatum tears his Achilles. Brown tears his meniscus. KP is gone. Giroux's gone. Luke Cornett is gone, Al Horford is gone, and the Celtics don't add a draft pick. I mean, that would have been catastrophic. At the very least, the Celtics came away with three players from the NBA draft, and there's definitely something to say about that. But enough about the Celtics, because we've talked a lot about that team. We have a lot more teams to get through here, and only, let's face it, folks, I wanted to make this an hour. I wanted to make this live an hour. I don't know if we're going to get there. When I say get there, right? I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain an hour, right? If we just spent 15 minutes on the Celtics, we have 29 more teams to get through. But again, let's get through these 29 teams. So maybe we can meet that hour threshold. All right. Maybe we can meet it at an hour, not 2 hours. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I can't guarantee anything, folks. You come here for quality. All right. You come here for quality. On to the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers have to be considered big draft winners because, come on, they picked third overall. VJ Edgecombe only played 2 summer league games and really showed out in those 2 summer league games. And not only that, the Sixers, I mean, they really just had the season from hell. I mean, the Sixers coming into last season, they were supposed to be a team that competed for the title, could win the Eastern Conference, and instead they wound up with the 13th seed at the end of the season. And of course, received a little bit of luck in the draft lottery and wound up third overall in the draft lottery. And that's a pretty good outcome considering the Sixers. This could have been a year where the Sixers fail from a standings perspective, right? I mean, even a play-in spot would have been a failure for the Sixers. Anything other than competing for the title would have been a failure for the Sixers, and it was. And the Sixers could have made the play-in. They could have been a little higher than 13th. And the Sixers could have easily given away their draft pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Sixers 2025 NBA, wait, the Sixers 2025 first round pick, right? We don't need to get all corporate and technical here, but the Sixers 2025 first round pick, that it was ultimately protected 1 through 6. And if it did not land 1 through 6, it was going to convey to the Oklahoma City Thunder via the Al Horford trade all the way back in 2020, right? The Sixers traded away their 2025 first round pick with Al Horford to alleviate themselves of the Al Horford contract all the way back in 2020. And the Sixers almost lost that pick in a season from hell to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who just won the NBA title. I mean, that could have been truly disastrous for the Philadelphia 76ers. Instead, we all know the Sixers, bottom 5 record in the league, and in the NBA draft lottery, wound up third overall. So not only did this, it was about keeping their pick, right? The Sixers going into the draft lottery, it was about keeping their pick. Just keep the pick 1 through 6. The Sixers not only kept their pick, but their pick fell third overall, and the Sixers picked VJ Edgecombe. And I will say, a lot of people out there will go, oh, Ace Bailey was out there. You know, you never know. There might be people who like Con Knipple and Trey Johnson, but VJ Edgecombe, I mean, he very athletic, very quick guard. You can definitely see there's a lot of people compare him to Dwayne Wade. I'm more on the he looks a little bit like Victor Oladipo. I can see Dwayne Wade definitely for for the people saying that, but I would say he's almost a more Victor Oladipo-esque type of player, right? He needs the Dwayne Wade. I felt like was a little more refined within his skill, at least with the ball in his hands. I think VJ Edgecombe can get there too, but there is he's still very young and there's still stairs to climb when it comes to putting his game at that level, right? So VJ Edgecombe, the fact the Sixers came out with him, that's a pure win in itself. I mean, surefire number one, or surefire, not number one pick, but rather prospect in the draft. And you go down the list, Johnny Broom in the second round. That's a swing in the second round for the Sixers, 37th overall. He's still on the board. He's a player that I believe isn't built for the NBA per se. His game in college was not built and refined for the NBA, yet he was a star in college. And you see these stars in college. I mean, you're good at basketball at one level. Why can't you be good in the NBA as well? Why can't you figure it out, right? If you were able to figure it out in college, why can't you maybe figure it out in the NBA? As we see Luka Garza right now with the Celtics. I mean, Luka Garza hasn't seen the most robust career thus far. That being said, he's a player who's stayed in the NBA, and the Celtics want to give him a chance. And he's a player who's kind of figured out how to maintain a roster spot 4 years into his career after college stardom, and people believing his game doesn't translate to the NBA. Johnny Broom's in the same spot. Game might not translate to the NBA, but could he figure out how to play more so NBA ball? My whole problem with Johnny Broom is he's a traditional post up player with wing size, right? He's the size of a wing, but he almost plays as a traditional post up player. Not a huge fan of that. coming out of the college ranks when you're talking about any player out there. I mean, for real, any player who's coming out of college playing out of their size range, right? That's what happens when you're playing out of your size range and you're not playing a more so if you're not a forward playing a guard spot, right? That is the most what is the that is the most desirable crossover of a player playing out of his size range, right? A player is a 7 foot 6'7" wing, right? Got some gotta we gotta we gotta the vocabulary tonight, like we gotta you can see it right now. You can see it right now. We gotta up it a little bit. We gotta lock in a little bit here. But ultimately, players playing out of their size range. Joanny Broom's one of those players. I mean, he's a forward playing the big man position, and I'm not a huge fan of that. But I like the swing at 37 for the Sixers. When you can get a college star at 37, we've seen college stars before in the past. Maybe their game doesn't translate to the NBA, but then they figure it out at the next level as they did in college, and they refine their game for better. Jalen Brunson, a huge example of that. College star at Villanova, comes to the league, and then eventually you see perennial All Star, and maybe the best player in the Eastern Conference. Who knows this season? But the Sixers, you have to term them winners on draft night. How about the Toronto Raptors? Colin Murray, Boyles, and Elijah Martin. I absolutely love this draft for the Toronto Raptors. Colin Murray Boyles is a Julius Randle-esque player, but he's a player that I 100% want on my basketball team because the all defensive potential behind Colin Murray Boyles is certainly there. And I believe in his career, Colin Murray Boyles should be a perennial all defensive caliber player. I mean, all defensive team member. That's who he should be in his career. He is that good defensively. Colin Murray Boyles is a player who could legitimately defend 1 through 5. I don't think he's going to have problems covering the quickest guards in the NBA, and I really don't think he's going to have problems covering some of the bigger, even centers in the NBA, just because of his length, athleticism, quickness, everything. I mean, his physique. He's very. I don't want to say he's not bulky like his counterpart here and his one of his peers, Elijah Martin, his other the Raptors' other draft pick. He's not as bulky as Elijah Martin, but he's definitely built. All right, Colin Murray Boyles is built, and I the one thing that concerns me about him is his 3-point shot. His shooting didn't shoot very well in college, and you definitely want to see a player when he comes into the NBA. That 3-point shot is important, all right, especially if you're going to be a forward or anything below a center. That 3-point shot is important. It's the one thing I worry about with Colin Murray Boyles, but defensively, that is where I'm really looking. Offensively, I'll state this too. Offensively, with Colin Murray Boyles, offensively, Colin Murray Boyles is a player that I look at and I believe. Well, Colin Murray Boyles, I'm concerned over his shot. Okay, I'm concerned over his ability to shoot the ball from beyond the perimeter. That being said, there are other offensive intangibles within his game that I believe in. I mean, there are some. Now, I'll also say this was a draft critique of mine for Colin Murray Boyles on draft night. All right. It was Colin Murray Boyles is a player who maybe needs to change up the way he scores offensively, right? He might need to change it up just a little bit. Some of his methods he used in college might not work in the NBA, and it's the same conversation with Joanny Broom, some of the post up opportunities and just taking advantage of certain mismatches. Now, you want to do that at the NBA level, but in college, some of these guys are scoring over over slower, bigger players. And in the NBA, those bigger players are going to be a lot quicker. So that's what I just question, especially with we were talking about Joanny Broom, but also a player like Colin Murray Boyles. Can they take advantage of the mismatches in the NBA in the same way they did in college? I don't think that's going to be the case, but over time, uh, I believe both players could find other methods to score, especially Colin Murray Boyles, who he scores well off cuts. I mean, he really has a knack for the ball around the rim. He does have a little bit of the blow by ability in his game. There is a lot of quickness in his game. Overall, I love him as a draft prospect. I'm concerned with the shot. I'm concerned with some of the scoring methods. That being said, defensively, I think he's an all defensive team member for. I really believe Colin Murray Boyles could be a perennial all defensive team member. That's where I believe he could be in his career. But Elijah Martin, 39th overall, there's something to be said about players who consistently find themselves within winning rotations. All right. Elijah Martin is one of those players. All right. Well, Elijah Martin goes to the Final Four with Florida Atlantic, goes to the Final Four with the Florida Gators, and wins a national championship with the Florida Gators as well. And he's a really hard playing player. I mean, he just plays his ass off. And yes, there are definitely some questions when it comes to the skill, offensively speaking, and even defensively. He is a hound dog defensively. That being said, he's a little small. Okay, when you have players who are a bit small out there, you worry about, "Oh, our team's going to take advantage of those mismatches on that player." That's the worry with Elijah Martin in the NBA. But I love the swing at 39 for the Raptors when it comes to Elijah Martin because he's been a winner in college. He plays his ass off, and those are two things right there that I mean, when you look at Elijah Martin and all of his college tape, why wouldn't you consider him for an NBA spot? All right. He's been in winning rotations in college. He plays his ass off, and there is a lot of defensive skill there. And offensively, needs a lot of refining, but you can tell he's a very heady player. And I'm sure there are a lot of good things to say about Elijah Martin from all of his teammates as well. So I love the Toronto Raptors and what they did with 9 and 39, Colin Murray Boyles and Elijah Martin. The next team, the New York Knicks, as we make our way through the Atlantic Division here. The next team, the New York Knicks, Mohamed Diawara. All right, Mohamed Diawara. Saw him in Summer League. All right, play the Celtics. Very raw player, 51st overall. Well, let's go back. Let's recap. Celtics winners, 76ers winners, Raptors winners. The Knicks, I'm going to term them as losers on draft night. And this is not anything against Mohamed Diawara, okay? Saw him play in Summer League. Very raw prospect. I mean, he's 51st overall, second round pick. But that's ultimately why you have to term the Knicks losers on draft night. They only owned a second round pick, and it was late in the second round, 51st overall, and added a player who I don't see getting much time within the Knicks rotation next season. Diawara at Summer League. Not a lot of offensive game there. I can see defensively where they like him, but offensively just very rough. I'm not really sure where the Knicks can use him offensively at all. And I think this one's pretty easy. When you only pick one time in the draft and it's 51st overall and it's a player who's likely not going to slot into your rotation next season, you're going to be a loser on draft night, all right? And it's not I'm not saying the Knicks are losers in the way of well, they botched their draft pick, right? They botched their I'm just saying the Knicks didn't really how much better did the Knicks make their roster on draft night, right? And maybe I should go and mention the criteria here that I'm kind of going off of, right? I kind of wrote down some criteria. I was gonna skip it completely, but I think it'd be good to talk about regardless because going through this seems like a little bit of a mess so far. But the winner criteria, right, I had for this landed a surefire prospect or multiple surefire prospects. The example, guys like Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper, the Spurs and the Mavs, they're going to be winners ultimately at the end of the day. We know this. They took explainable swings, right? We talked about Liam McNeely already. Liam McNeely was an explainable swing at 29. The Hornets are sitting there. The Hornets already drafted Con Knipple on the night. And at 29, that pick came from the Phoenix Suns because the Suns own that pick, traded it to the Charlotte Hornets for Mark Williams, and the Hornets drafted Liam McNeely. So the Hornets, that was kind of I don't want to say kind of, because let's face it, they traded Mark Williams for that 29th overall pick. But the Hornets, their big prize on draft night was Con Knipple, Liam McNeely at 29. He was a player who was sliding down the board. And the Hornets are going, we already got our surefire prospect. Why not take a swing on Liam McNeely. So that was a calculated, explainable swing, right? And that would be in the winner criteria. And also, the third bullet point I have here is made team instantly better, right, with their picks. And I would say the Hornets, right? The Hornets did that. That's the example. And ultimately, a team either came away with the top pick or added multiple players of value. And you could definitely say the Hornets would be in that category. That they'd be the example. So the winner criteria, just to go over this, landed a surefire prospect, if not multiple prospects, took explainable swings, and made the team instantly better, whether they came away with the top pick or added multiple players of value. So that's more of my winner criteria, right? As for the loser criteria, landed questionable prospects. The example there would be the New Orleans Pelicans. Took swings at value spots. Example there would be the Brooklyn Nets. And didn't make the team better. And under that, I would say only came away with a second round pick, such as the Knicks, right? Such as the Cavs. The Cavs came away with multiple second round picks. And a team ultimately didn't have a draft pick, right? Such as the Rockets or the Nuggets. So the loser criteria landed questionable prospects, took swings at value spots, and didn't make the team better. Only came away with a second round pick or didn't have a pick at all, right? So let's go through this now, knowing what the criterias are, because I think the criteria was actually important. We went through 4 teams, and it felt like it was a little all over the place, but I think we can now kind of center in on where these teams lie within that criteria. Okay. And we can kind of slot the picks in, right? 30 minutes in, we have this figured out, folks. Okay, we have a script here, but now we have this figured out. We're going through it. A little messy there, but let's do the rest of the league. All right, so the Brooklyn Nets. To me, this is the Brooklyn Nets. They take over number 2 on the loser criteria list, or the bullet points, right? The Brooklyn Nets represent number 2 on the loser criteria list. Took swings at value spots. All right. So the Nets, they drafted Agor Demon, which we got a spider on the iPad here. Oh, okay. This live is going a little rough so far. Let's keep going though. The Brooklyn Nets, they selected Agor Demon, 8th overall, Nolan Traore, 19th overall, Drake Powell, 22nd overall, and Ben Seraph, 26th overall, before they also selected Danny Wolf, 27th overall. So the Nets, I got to say, the Nets, you notice here, 5 first-round picks for the Brooklyn Nets. And the Nets utilized every single one of them, and not for a trade or not for anything other than picking each player and placing those players onto their roster. Okay, the Brooklyn Nets picked at all 5 positions, and somehow, some way, the Brooklyn Nets came away with 5 players I'm really not a fan of. Okay, especially the guards here, Agor Demon, Nolan Traore, and Ben Seraph. They're all the same type of guard. Okay, they're all guards who own questionable shots, and they're all guards who I don't I'm not very high on all of them making the NBA impact in which is envisioned for these type of guards. I mean, these guards, I understand why people like them, right? They are theoretical guards. Theoretically, if their shot comes I'm sorry. I'm not in on the theoretical guards the way other people are. And the Brooklyn Nets, they drafted 3 of them here. Agor Demon, Nolan Traore, and Ben Seraph. And the thing that was really concerning about the Nets is they not only fit into the second category, took swings at value spots, but they also landed questionable prospects as well. And most notably, number 8. All right. Number 8th overall, Agor Demon. That was really high for Demon, and I would have I Demon I pinpointed as a player who could have dropped on draft night. Instead, he actually rose up the draft boards and went 8th overall and was a top 10 pick. That I'm just he is a questionable prospect to me, and the Nets landed him at 8. And I gotta say, the Nets overall, Drake Powell injured, 22. Look, he's a player that I believe I like more because of the relevancy around him when it comes to the Nets and who they picked, right? I'm looking at Demon, Traore, Seraph, and even Wolf. I'm going, all right, well, Powell, he's a versatile wing, and Maybe there's more to his game than what was displayed at North Carolina. But I'm not a massive Drake Powell fan either. But I feel like I like him a little bit more compared to what the Nets just drafted. So for me, I feel like I'm a little jaded on Drake Powell. I feel like if a team just came away with Drake Powell alone, I'd go, that's not amazing. But the fact the Nets came away with all these questionable prospects and then Drake Powell, I go, well, at least they got Drake Powell. At least there's a player I can see maybe playing in the NBA. All these other players I could see, are they going to be? I'm really hoping they're not Killian Hayes. I mean, that's really bad. All right, that would be stooping. I almost feel like that's stooping too low. Danny Wolf, 27. I think there's some value in that pick. That's an explainable swing at 27, especially you just picked 4 times in the first round. Danny Wolf is sitting right there, and he's a player that might have, from some people's perspectives, might have dropped a little bit in the draft. And I like that selection right there. I mean, and a perimeter big, active big, and very athletic for his size. He's a 7'1" big man who plays on the perimeter, plays a little bit like Karl Anthony Towns if you kind of picture his game. And I'm not convinced he's going to be a player that sticks around in the NBA forever, right? Danny Wolf, given some of his flaws. That being said, I can see the swing at 27 for the Nets. That being said, the Nets, what they did with all 5 of their first round picks, especially Demon, Traore, Serif, and then Powell and Wolf. I mean, to me, the Brooklyn Nets, although they added 5 first round picks to their roster, clear losers on draft night. All right, clear losers. And it's because, let's face it, they landed questionable prospects and took swings at value spots. And did they make the team any better? You could say probably because they added 5 first round picks, but how much better? And that's the thing too, is 5 first round picks. They might have made the team just slightly better, the Nets, just slightly. And when you have first round picks, I think that should be not just slightly better, right? You shouldn't be at just slightly better. You should be at extraordinarily better. So ultimately, the Nets not winners on draft night. The Miami Heat, number 20, Kasparis Jonas. I keep saying number 20, number 20th overall. The Miami Heat selected Kasparis Jonas, and he's an Illinois guy. All right, Illinois guy, home state here, home state, from St. Louis, but we're on the east side, we're on the Metro East. St. Louis on the Illinois side, but Jonas, an Illinois guy. And I would say the Miami Heat come out of draft night winners because Jonas, I would have I if I am I am amazed at how far Jonas and Demon were picked apart, and I'm amazed that Demon was picked 12 picks ahead of Jonas. Because for me, those are 2 players that own similar play styles to each other, and yet Jonas is seen as a player who should go 20th and Demon 8th overall. And I understand the teams, the individual teams are evaluating them. So it's not some kind of league wide thing of, the teams are about between 8 and 20, right? 8 and 20. It's not every team in the league. Other teams say if the Celtics were drafting 8th overall, maybe they go with the Jonas. That I'm just saying, other teams, they like certain prospects. A lot of teams may have liked Jonas over a guy like Demon. Just saying. The Nets, on the other hand, obviously didn't and went ahead and picked Demon 8th overall. But I'm shocked to see Demon go 8th overall. I was shocked to see Demon go 8th overall and Jonas 20th overall because coming into the draft, similar style of player, I would have put Jonas. I mean, I did put Jonas on my draft boards way ahead of Demon when it came to just player by player ranking, but even positional ranking. I had Jonas over Demon and would go Jonas over Demon any day of the week still to this day. All right, even after everything. In Summer League, we shouldn't put too much stock into Summer League, but there is a data point of evaluation to analyze there. But Jonas at 20, the fact he fell down the board to the Miami Heat, he's a Goran Dragic type of player, right? He plays a little bit like Austin Reeves too. Those are the comparisons for Jonas. The Miami Heat won within the 2025 NBA draft. They are winners, all right, because they only picked once. They picked 20th overall, and they came away with a player who arguably could have gone top 10 in Jonas, and he falls down the draft board. The Heat are sitting there at 20. Their roster is a little up in the air. We all know what happened with the Jimmy Butler situation and the players the Heat ultimately roster now. But the Heat, at the position they were at, capitalized on the value. Okay. And that's why, if you look at the winner criteria here, the Heat didn't land a surefire prospect. And did they make their team instantly better? Maybe. Maybe. We're not going to say definitively, but maybe. But the Heat took an explainable swing, right? Yakachonis, 20th overall, could have been a top 10 prospect, but could have been a top 10 overall player, right? And the Heat, they're sitting there at 20. There's not a real direction for the Heat to go. Do they pick a guard, a wing, a big? I mean, it's not really clear which direction the Heat should have gone on draft night, and they're just simply awarded with best player available here, Yakachonis. He just fell down the board. He's here at 20. We can't believe he's actually here in the 20s. Let's go ahead and pick him. So the Miami Heat, clear winners on draft night for me because of the Yakachonis pick, and it was their only pick. But the fact that Yakachonis was there at 20 for the Heat, and they're again, the Heat, it wasn't clear what the Heat were supposed to do on draft night. And yet, when it comes to their pick, I mean, it was answered for them. I mean, it was answered for them. It comes to their pick, and they go, "Well, Yakachonis is sitting right here. Let's take an explainable swing on him." So the Heat winners on draft night. As for the Atlanta Hawks, as we move on to the Southeast Division here, well, we already moved on with the Miami Heat, but as we move further into the Southeast Division, the Atlanta Hawks, I would say they're winners on draft night because the Atlanta Hawks came into draft night with the 13th overall pick, and then the Hawks flipped that 13th overall pick for the 23rd overall pick, where they drafted Asa Newell, who has never left the state of Georgia. Well, I see there was a high school years in Florida there, but Asa Newell from Georgia, right? And played with the Georgia Bulldogs, drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. And that's definitely a story I believe that people should maybe people shouldn't do anything with, but look into it. I mean, on it, Asa Newell with the Atlanta Hawks, uh, that's a hometown kid, right? A hometown first round pick going to Atlanta. I think Asa Newell could fit in with the Hawks quite well. That being said, that was not the point here. It will be part of the point and why the Hawks are winners, but the Hawks traded the 13th overall pick to the New Orleans Pelicans for the 23rd overall pick, which became Asa Newell, and that 13th overall pick became Derek Queen. But the Atlanta Hawks also picked up a 2026 unprotected first round pick from the New Orleans Pelicans. And that will be the more favorable pick between the Pelicans and the Bucks next season, which we all know the Pelicans in the Western Conference and even the Bucks, let's face it, we don't know. I mean, Giannis, we believe Giannis is going to stay in Milwaukee, but you never know what could happen there. But ultimately, the Pelicans gave up their 2026 first round pick, an unprotected pick, to the Atlanta Hawks to move up 10 spots to draft Derek Queen, who might not even be good. Okay? I know a lot of people are high on Derek Queen, but is he even an NBA player at the end of all this hoopla and fiasco, right? Is Derek Queen a legitimate NBA player? The Hawks traded, sorry, my bad. The Pelicans traded. Yeah, we're just jumbled tonight. We got to ride with it, folks, but we're jumbled, but we'll ride with it. The Pelicans traded their 2026 unprotected first round pick. Okay, the Pelicans could be 15th in the Western Conference next year. The Pelicans could land the first overall pick next year. And they just traded away that pick to the Atlanta Hawks to move up 10 spots. And the Hawks go, well, we move back 10 spots and we still get a nice prospect in Asa Newell who fits along with our team, like the upside of. And hey, he's a Georgia product, hometown kid here in Atlanta. We'll take him. The Atlanta Hawks, clear winners on draft night because not only did they pick up a hometown kid in Asa Newell, who I believe is going to be pretty good for the Hawks, but the Hawks also picked up the Pelicans 2026 unprotected first round pick, which to this day I am just I can't even fathom. I have no idea why the Pelicans, Joe Dumars, Troy Weaver in the front office with the Benson family, right? Gail Benson. I don't know what what were the conversations like for that conclusion to be had at the end of the night. Okay, what exactly did they talk about when it came to Derek Queen and we'll get into them later. I should say we should save this conversation later, but because we're supposed to be talking about the Hawks here, but the Pelicans, I'm unfathomable that they gave up their 2026 unprotected first round pick to move up 10 spots for a player at 13th overall who may not be an NBA player in time. Let's just face it. Derek Queen, is there a spot for him in the NBA? We don't know. But we'll save that conversation for when the Pelicans come up here as we make our way through the East. 45 minutes in. Ugh. Okay, we gotta speed things up here. I don't think, folks, I'm sorry, we're not gonna meet our hour mark. I don't see it here. I don't think we're gonna meet our hour mark. But the Charlotte Hornets, clear winners on draft night because under the winner criteria, right? They landed surefire prospect, Conka Nipple, okay, 4th overall. They took explainable swings. Ryan Cockbrunner in the 2nd round, Liam McNeely at 29th overall, even Zion James, you could say, and made team instantly better. All right. The Charlotte Hornets easily made their team instantly better. And it's characterized by the fact the Charlotte Hornets won the NBA Summer League Championship, their first trophy ever. The Charlotte Hornets had never won any trophy ever. NBA Cup, Finals, West. I was like Eastern Conference, West Conference Finals trophy, right? The Hornets have never won a trophy. Period. It was their first trophy ever, and of course, Conka Nipple comes out as the championship game MVP. The Hornets are going to be better next year. They should be better. Young players getting better ultimately adds more to a team than people realize. And not only that, when you add the players in which the Hornets did, especially Knipple, McNeely, and Cockbrunner primarily, I'm a little less high on Zion James, but Knipple, McNeely, Cockbrunner, those are 3 players who you could see playing in the Hornets rotation 3 years from now. I mean, there are only so many rotation spots in the NBA, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 guys. And you could see in a couple seasons, the Hornets, 3 of those 8, 9, 10, 11 guys could be Knipple, McNeely, and Cockbrunner. So the Hornets instantly made their team better. They landed a surefire prospect in Knipple and took explainable swings when it came to McNeely, who fell down the board, who we talked about a lot already, and Ryan Cockbrunner. I mean, Ryan Cockbrunner, not necessarily a swing per se, but was a big in the 2nd round who there were some debates about which big should go off the board first. I shouldn't say first, but which bigs should go off the board before one another. And Cockbrunner goes 34th overall to the Hornets. And there were certainly a lot of people around Celtics Nation who loved and liked Cockbrunner potentially on the Celtics. So the Hornets take a swing there. And again, maybe not so much a swing, but just a value pick in Cockbrunner, one of the better prospects available at that time. So clear winners in the draft, the Charlotte Hornets. I don't think that's maybe it's. I mean, all of this is debatable, to be fair. But I was going to say, yeah, maybe that's not debatable, right? When you win the Summer League championship and all your young guys look great, maybe that's not a debatable point. But all of these are debatable. Let's face it. The Orlando Magic, all right, the Orlando Magic. Jace Richardson, 25th overall. Noah Pinda, 32nd overall. Now, Noah Pinda, I would say he falls into the criteria. I think the Magic are going to go with likely which criteria list do they fit into more? I would say they're probably more so in the winner criteria. Okay. The winner criteria, the Magic didn't land surefire prospects. I really wish we did the criterias for the first 4 teams. We have to loop back on the first 4. Anybody watching this now, just disregard the first 30 minutes. We weren't talking about the criteria. The criteria matters. My goodness. I at the beginning I was saying, oh, the criteria matters. All right. The criteria, what the reference point. Got to refer back to the criteria every single time. But regardless, the Magic, they fit more so under the winner criteria because ultimately, I understand they didn't land a surefire prospect, but I would say the Magic took explainable swings. One could say Jace Richardson fell down the board a little bit to the Magic at 25 at 25th overall, and not only that, the Magic their point guard situation is still very much up in the air. The Magic want Anthony Black to be that point guard of the future, but it's not guaranteed. And of course, the Magic, they signed Tyus Jones this summer, and that was after the draft. So at this point in the draft, Tyus Jones had not signed with the Magic yet. So the Magic didn't, I mean, their point guard situation was basically Anthony Black, right? And the Magic, they needed they filled a position of need with a player who fell down the draft board, and a lot of people, the conversation I kind of had before the draft was Jace Richardson or Walter Clayton, who's the better guard, who's the better smaller guard at the end of the first round. Walter Clayton goes 18th overall, Jace Richardson goes 25th overall. That being said, coming into the draft, I was looking at the two of them going, there might be a little bit more upside in Jace Richardson simply because of the defensive intangibles Jace Richardson brings to the floor compared to Walter Clayton. Jace Richardson is a lot better of a defender than Walter Clayton. Yet he goes 7 picks behind Walter Clayton, and I would have those players around somewhere the same level. So Jace Richardson certainly fell down the board there a little bit in the draft. You could say Walter Clayton was picked a little high at 18, maybe. I would say that was Richardson and Walter Clayton went about in their ranges. I would say Clayton maybe a little sooner and Richardson a little later, but they're 7 picks apart, so it wasn't that big of a discrepancy there. And I would say it was an explainable swing though for the Magic at 25, picking 25th overall. You take a player who fell a little bit, and you take a player who fills a definitive need on the team at point guard, and you never know. Jace Richardson, he'd be good enough to be the point guard of the future for the Magic. I mean, forget Anthony Black, forget Tyus Jones, the two players in front of him right now. Jace Richardson could become a player with the Orlando Magic who is a vital rotation player for a winning team in time. Okay, and not only that, his father, Jason Richardson, played with the Orlando Magic, so I mean, there's that connection there as well. But the Magic, did they make their team instantly better with their picks? Mm, I would say in the short term, maybe not, because it's arguable next year the Magic will be a top contender in the Eastern Conference. I believe they will be. I don't see a world. I don't see a reason why the Magic couldn't be a top three team in the East. I think a lot of people are going to slot Orlando into a top three seed when they make their preseason predictions and rankings and all that good jazz. I believe the Orlando Magic will be highly regarded when it comes to that. And that begs the question, does Jace Richardson, does he slot into the Magic rotation for a grand amount of minutes this season? I don't see that necessarily being the case, especially considering the point guards in front of him, Anthony Black and Tyus Jones. I think in time, Jace Richardson could be a nice piece for the Magic, but is it going to be, is Jace Richardson going to put out an instant impact to the Magic roster? I'm I'm a little skeptical on that. That being said, the Magic, they land under the winner criteria because of the fact they took explainable swings in Richardson and even Penda. Penda fell a little bit. Wasn't a massive fall. I mean, he was just the best player on the board when it came to 32nd overall. And you look at the end of the first round, a lot of people around, you'd say early 20s was Noah Penda here and there, but didn't go until 32. So the Magic, with their picks, I would say they are winners of the draft, and we have to explain this too. And this is under the criteria. Um, this is under the made team instantly better, right? But this is also a data point that maybe is different from just instantly better. Added multiple players of value. Okay. And I think that's what the Magic did. I think that's what they did with Jace Richardson and Noah Pinda. Those spots right there, 25th overall, 32nd overall, those are not great draft positions. Yet the Magic come away with two players who were arguably the best on the board at that time in the draft, whether it was Jace Richardson or Noah Pinda, both of those picks. So you have to you have to look at the Magic there and go, well, they added some value with their picks, and that would definitely fit into the winner criteria. As for the Washington Wizards, as we round out the Southeastern Conference, the Wizards are clear winners in the draft because number one, they landed a surefire top prospect in Trey Johnson, 6th overall. And then later in the draft, 21st, Will Riley, and 43rd, Jameer Watkins. And we're going to hone in mostly on Will Riley here because Will Riley could be a player that comes in with the Wizards and he could make their team. I mean, Trey Johnson should make their team instantly better, but Will Riley could too, given the fact he's a versatile forward who, let's face it, could slot in and play minutes with the Wizards instantly because of their rotation. I mean, the rotation for the Wizards right now is a lot of young guys, and Will Riley could come in there and make the team instantly better. And again, Trey Johnson, surefire prospect. And I would say the Wizards, they weren't under they didn't have to take any swings necessarily. I mean, you could say, Jameer Watkins, but second round picks, that's not necessarily a massive swing. But the surefire prospect angle of all this. Now, I will say Trey Johnson. I just from my own subjective personal analysis of Trey Johnson is going to be an NBA player. All right. I don't have any worries about Trey Johnson falling out of the league. No, no. He is a multi-level scorer. All right. He can handle the ball. He feels comfortable handling the ball, can shoot off the dribble, and he's just a pure shooter. He really reminds me of Buddy Hield, the way he flies off screens and manages DHO sets, and he can just shoot the ball from anywhere, right? Buddy Hield, anytime he pulls up, it's just silky smooth, silky smooth. Trey Johnson is that type of player, and he has a little bit more to his game as well. He can handle the ball a little bit, can shoot off the dribble, and he's just a lengthy wing. All right, he's a lengthy wing who could easily slot into that two guard spot. He's got the size of a wing, but he's almost he's probably going to be a two guard in the NBA on most nights, and that's just a player. I don't. My only thing with Trey Johnson is where does his stardom actually reach? I think some people could look at Trey Johnson in the future and go, sixth overall, was that too high? I think he's a surefire prospect at sixth overall. I just question, is he going to be a star? Okay. Is he going to be a star? I don't know if Trey Johnson is going to be a star more so than a really high level starter who is contributing to a team or even multiple teams for years to come. I believe Trey Johnson will stick in the NBA and will exude value wherever he's at, but I'm not certain he'll be a surefire all star, which might might it might blur the vision when it comes to Trey Johnson, whether or not this is a winning pick or not. I personally like the pick because it feels, sixth overall feels safe, feels a little safe. Some people go, I don't like teams playing it safe, and I wouldn't say the Wizards were playing it safe at sixth overall, but out of all the prospects, right? If I'm looking at every prospect outside of Cooper Flag, essentially, who am I who am I most looking at to be a player who at least sticks around in the NBA? Forget stardom, right? Forget stardom. I don't want to start. Who's going to stick around in the NBA? Trey Johnson, and you could even say Con Knipple. I mean, Trey Johnson and Con Knipple, those were the two players I would have pinpointed and went, I don't know if they're going to be surefire perennial all stars, but I know they're going to be starters for years to come because of their skill sets. Okay, because they can win in the margins. They could be stars, they could be the focal point of an offense in the NBA, but they're also marginal players. They win in the margins. They can, I mean, we talked about this with McNeely earlier at 29, but talking about this with surefire picks right now. They're guys, Trey Johnson and Con Knipple, they're guys who understand where their spots are and how to attack. Okay. So Trey Johnson, sixth overall for the Wizards, absolutely love that pick. I think he's going to be an NBA player for years to come. I don't know how much of a star he's going to be, but I love the pick for the Wizards considering sixth overall for Trey Johnson. That is you could have argued maybe top three for Trey Johnson. Maybe you got Philly. Maybe Philly would have been interested in him. But the Wizards, I would pinpoint them as winners on draft night. The Chicago Bulls. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and say the Chicago Bulls were losers on draft night. And here's why. Noah Asenge, the Chicago Bulls, right? My issue with the Chicago Bulls is they just I the Bulls fail from a personality evaluation perspective every single season. when it comes to their prospects and maybe even the players they try to mine out there on the trade market or even the free agent market. The Bulls, if anybody watched Io DeSumu's vlogs last year, right? I would, I'm not saying, oh, let's evaluate the entirety of the Bulls team off of Io DeSumu's vlogs. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that when a player, when they're talking during a podcast or when they're putting out vlogs, they are giving away certain pieces of information. Okay, they're giving away pieces of information that might not be, oh, they're saying it with their words up front, but oh, you can see this movement here, and oh, how this is stated over here, and oh, the emotions coming out over here. You can kind of pick up on those little things, right? During Io DeSumu's vlog, the Chicago Bulls last season just didn't really seem like a team who truly liked each other, and they didn't really seem like a team that was enjoying playing basketball with each other or enjoyed traveling around with each other. I think the young guys on the Chicago Bulls, the Chicago Bulls were a very interesting mix of players last year. You had some veterans who were trying to make it in the league or still trying to get uh, themselves contracts in the league, right? Furthermore than what they've already received. Guys like Nikola Vucevic on the roster last year. And then you have a bunch of young guys who've not been there before. They're on rookie scale contracts. Oh, the Bulls have been bad, and they're a little more you had the serious veterans and kind of the goofy young guys on the Bulls last year, and I didn't feel like those personality groups necessarily meshed for the Bulls. I mean, you want to see it mesh a little bit more how it is in Charlotte right now, or at least did last season, where you had Grant Williams and Seth Curry down there as the veterans. Grant Williams, a younger veteran, but very much a veteran in the NBA for what he's been able to do with the primarily the Celtics, but also the Mavericks and even the short time with the Hornets. But Grant Williams with the Hornets and Seth Curry with the Hornets and all their young guys. I know the Hornets, there's some immaturity there, but it does seem like it meshes a little better. Like the young guys and the old guys, they get along, right? In Chicago, it seemed like they didn't necessarily get along. It felt like the old guys were annoyed with the young guys, and the young guys were overly goofy in the locker room from the standpoint of if they're not really getting the mentorship from their veterans, yeah, they're maybe going to be a little more unbuttoned, right? That's kind of the gist for the Chicago Bulls. The thing I worry about here with the Chicago, why does this okay, why does this matter, right? When it comes to the Chicago Bulls, when I'm talking about all this, why does this matter? Noah Asingay at 12. Noah Asingay left the German League Finals, okay, left his team, who was in the German League Finals, to attend the NBA draft, which some people might say, he had a guarantee from the Bulls that he would be drafted 12th overall. That's why I wasn't worried too much about his draft positioning or how that would have affected his draft positioning. But it's very clear that when you leave a team, okay, in the middle of a championship run, as his team was playing in the German League Finals, where's the competitiveness, right? Where's the love for basketball? Where's that going to be? All right, that is a massive point of analyzation for a guy like Noah Asingay, because Asingay, he kind of strikes me as somebody with this a little mellow person, and not LaMelo Ball or Carmelo Anthony, like mellow, right, down to earth a little bit. Asingay, the fire sometimes seems a little dim. Okay, seems a little dim with Noah Asingay sometimes. And I'm just not certain he's going to be a player in time that develops into this. Oh wow, the Bulls have this great leader who's in their starting lineup. And 12th overall, you could argue, maybe the Bulls at that point, they're drafting more for a role player than they are a star, and maybe that's the gist with that point in the draft, right? Players are going to be maybe oriented towards, that's kind of the range in the draft, right? You get outside the top 10, you're 12th overall. When you start getting into, are you a role player or could you be something a little bit more, right? We've seen players like Bam Adebayo, Donovan Mitchell, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, players like that. They've turned into stars over time. Tyler Hero, right? They've turned into stars. They have other players who just kind of been around the role player range when it comes to that pick. Asingay, he's in that, are you going to be a little bit better than a role player, or are you just going to be a role player, right? And that's where you could say, oh, the leadership, the personality. If he's not a star, how much of that will you need in the locker room as a role player? I just am not amazed by the personalities within the Chicago Bulls organization. I think there's a lot of goofiness. I don't know if there's a lot of leadership there. And Noah Singay, I just feel like he's a player who needs a little bit of that veteran help in time, because the whole German league situation, I just feel like I just feel like that was an immature move. Okay. I don't care what people have to say when it comes, oh, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to draft. It's kind of an immature move when you have this business obligation over here. You've been working for them. They brought you along, and then you abandon that and go over here because of self-interest, right? You have a team interest over here, self-interest over here. Noah Singay picked the self-interest over the team interest. That concerns me a little bit with him coming into the league, and it definitely concerns me when it comes to his competitiveness. And what further concerns me is he's going to an organization who has historically not been able to develop players to their most optimal potential, their maximized potential. And not only that, they're going to an organization where I believe the leadership is very much up in the air. So you have this whole situation with the Sengay coming into the draft. It's like, what kind of personality does a Sengay actually own? Is his personality wired in a competitive way for the NBA? That's a huge question with the Sengay. And then he falls to the Chicago Bulls, who are a mess when it comes to developing players and actually providing veteran leadership to young players. And I just see a Sengay as being another one of those players with the Chicago Bulls where you go, oh, I see why they like this prospect, a Ford who can do multiple things on the basketball court, but didn't really come along, right? I'm like two players I'm instantly thinking of, and a third one. I could even think of a third one here. I'll think of three players here: Laurie Markkinen, Patrick Williams, and Kobe White. Okay, those are three players who I believe if they were in other organizations, they certainly would have been maximized a lot more than they were with the Chicago Bulls, or at least their development would have been maximized a lot more than it was with the Chicago Bulls. Markkinen, Patrick Williams, Kobe White. I mean, I'm sure there are more players you can add to that list. Wendell Carter, you could say, with the Chicago Bulls, obviously with the Magic now, and I understand Kobe White, improved, but I don't Kobe White where they picked him relative to the guard he actually is. I don't think he's necessarily reached his full potential in his NBA career, or at least didn't develop into what he could have been as a guard. And just also going down the list here, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I basically named all. I mean, Denzel Valentine, all the way back when. So yeah, I mean, Laurie Markkinen. I mean, the guys you're looking at primarily, it's Laurie Markkinen, Wendell Carter, Kobe White, Patrick Williams. I mean, those are guys that I believe. I mean, Noah Singay, I could easily see falling into that same category of, oh, I see why the Bulls like that prospect, but then the Bulls botched his development. And Buzelis could be that player as well. I had Buzelis and Asenge could be the new generation of Carter, Markkinen, Carter, White, and Williams when it comes to the Bulls botching the development of players. That being said, there's a world where Buzelis and Asenge turn into the next Brown and Tatum. Brown and Tatum, that is. Brown or Tatum, Brown and Tatum. Either or, right? So I would turn the Bulls as losers on draft night. They also picked Lachlan Ulbrich, 55th overall. And that could be a player, let's face it, this could be one of those, I skim over the second round pick and he's amazing, but Lachlan Ulbrich, 55th overall, I don't have much to say about that one. Milwaukee Bucks, I would, look, the Milwaukee Bucks, they're losers, okay? Boglub Jub, okay, I feel like I feel like I just botched that name. Boglajub Markovich. Boglajub Markovich. Okay. That's who the Bucks selected 47th overall. The Bucks only own that singular 47th overall pick. And Markovich, I'm gonna term the Bucks losers on draft night because anytime you're only adding a 47th overall pick, Markovich could be, you never know, could be a great player. Second round pick, the hit rate is very low. Markovich, there was some in the summer league. Let's see if I'm not mistaken. Might be thinking of another player here, but Markovich for the Bucks in the summer league. Well, let's just confirm this here. Okay, there were some okay moments from Boglovich, from Boglojub Markovich, which, let's face it, folks, I don't know if I'm saying that first name right, but Markovich, there were some moments in the summer league for him. And yes, I was thinking of the right player here. Gotta re up on the second round picks. I did have some moments in the summer league. Had a nice game against the Miami Heat, but anytime you're at, I just is Markovich going to play with the Giannis Bucks this season? Is he going to play in the rotation with Giannis and the Bucks? Probably not. So for me, the Bucks only landed a second round pick. If you look at the loser category, only came away with the second round pick. That would be the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, didn't make the team better. Only came away with the second round pick. The Bucks didn't take a swing. When you're going into the second round, landed questionable prospects. That's not even a thing you're considering there because all of them are questionable. So ultimately, Markovich with the Bucks, you only landed a second round pick. That's in the loser criteria. Okay, Markovich might be the next Jokic. Who knows? But that is loser criteria for the Bucks. Again, couple good games for Markovich in the summer league. Okay, couple. All right, I'll note that. I'll note that. All right, I'll note that. Moving on to the Indiana Pacers, I would say the Indiana Pacers are oddly winners on draft night, and you could term them losers from the fact they only had picks 38 and 54, and they picked 38th overall Cam Jones and 54th overall Talon Peter. But 38, that Cam Jones pick actually lands in the winner criteria, okay? Took explainable swings. All right? That is the number 2 bullet point on the winner criteria. And let's see. Let's change one of these here. Took an explainable swing because most of the time it's one singular swing, right? Took an explainable swing. But the winner criteria, I would say Cam Jones at 38 was an explainable swing for the Indiana Pacers. Okay? And dang, we are an hour in. We never changed the thing at the bottom. We're just on a roll tonight here, folks. We're on a roll here tonight. Uh, but my goodness. But the Indiana Pacers, Cam Jones, I would say Cam Jones at 38. That is an explainable swing. I think he's going to be a player that could potentially add some value to the Pacers roster this year, given the fact Tyrese Halliburton will be out of the lineup. The Pacers will be inevitably experimenting at different points in the season, and Cam Jones could be a player that I think Rick Carlisle might find a place for within the lineup. And given all look at all the great guard play the Pacers had last season. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton won't be around next season, but all the other great guards on the Pacers roster, why can't Cam Jones slot into that guard rotation and play some minutes and even boost his status within that rotation the way other players, such as, say, an Andrew Nimhard has over time, or a Ben Shepherd, right? Players like that on the Indiana Pacers who have come along within Rick Carlisle's system. I see Cam Jones on that same trajectory as a second round pick. Definitely have to take a grain of salt with the second round pick and say, all right, second round pick hit rates, not all that great. But if there was one player in the second round where, if you were to determine who landed with one of the better situations for their position and who could actually land some minutes in the second round, you'd certainly say Cam Jones at 38th overall for the Pacers. That was an explainable swing for the Pacers because Cam Jones could certainly see some minutes with the Pacers this season. As for Talon Peter, 54th overall, seems like he slid a little bit on the boards. So that could be termed as another maybe explainable swing for the Pacers. But I'm primarily looking at Cam Jones. So the Pacers, I'm going to go ahead and say they're winners on draft night, despite not having a first round pick, only having second round picks, but ultimately making the most out of particularly one of those second round picks, 38th overall in Cam Jones. As for the Pistons, 37th overall, Chaz Lanier from Tennessee. I'm going to say the Pistons are losers here. I didn't think they made their roster instantly better. Chaz Lanier, a little bit of a swing there at 37, I would say. And I'm just not so sure where Lanier is going to slot in with the Pistons. There's a lot of guard depth in Detroit, and I'm just not certain Lanier is going to see any run at all with the Pistons anytime soon. So therefore, the Pistons, they fall under the category of only made a second round pick, and they arguably took a swing on that second round pick, and they didn't really make their team any better, right? The Pistons didn't really make their team any better on draft night. So I would say the Detroit Pistons are losers on draft night. Losers. Moving down, the Cleveland Cavaliers, 49th overall, Tyrese Proctor, and 58th overall, Saliu Niang. Okay, Saliu Niang. I'm going to say the Cavaliers are losers from the sheer fact 2 second-round picks. Proctor, look, I understand people are going to like Proctor, but 49th overall, 58th overall, only second-round picks. How much better do the Cavs make their roster next season? I would say very minimally. I don't think they made their roster better at all. These are players who could easily be on two-way contracts or not even around. So I think easily for me, the Cavaliers have to be losers here. And again, with the second round picks, could one of these guys be the next Nikola Jokic? Maybe so. But I'm going to term the Cavaliers losers. And that does it for the Eastern Conference. So, folks, we're now an hour and 16 minutes in. We didn't quite get to the hour mark. And we have a whole conference left. Let's see if we can get under 2 hours. All right, here we go. On to the Western Conference. Maybe we can do a better job with the Western Conference here. Maybe we can fly through the West. It's all about practicing the times. This live has been kind of rough, I got to say. I mean, just giving it up front here. It's been a little rough. I feel like I'm a little scatterbrained tonight with all these picks. I feel like I'm going back on a topic, right? This topic was a month ago, and it's kind of an excuse, right? I'm going back on a topic. Just not on the A game. That's the real excuse. Not on the A game right now. No excuses otherwise. But regardless, moving on to the Western Conference, the Memphis Grizzlies, number 11. First of all, okay, you see it right here, folks. You see it. 11th overall, the Memphis Grizzlies drafted Cedric Coward. And what needs to be mentioned here is, let's go through all the Grizzlies picks. 11th overall, Cedric Coward. 49th overall, Javon Small. And 59th overall, Jemai Mashak. The Grizzlies, looking at who they drafted, I would say they are winners on draft night, but you have to consider the Grizzlies traded up to draft Cedric Coward 11th overall. The Grizzlies traded up to draft Cedric Coward 11th overall. And they traded away a future first-round pick that belonged to the Orlando Magic, who traded an abundant amount of picks to the Memphis Grizzlies, a plethora of picks to the Memphis Grizzlies in the Desmond Bane deal. And the Memphis Grizzlies turned around and traded one of those picks to the Portland Trailblazers, along with the 16th overall pick, in which they also received from the Magic. So the Grizzlies flipped 2 of those picks they received from the Orlando Magic in the Desmond Bane deal for the 11th overall pick, in which turned out to be Cedric Coward. Cedric Coward, I really like Cedric Coward as a draft prospect. The only problem with Cedric Coward is small sample size, number one, but number two, dealt with a shoulder injury all of last season, or pretty much most of last season, has dealt with a shoulder injury since last November and didn't play Summer League because of it. Okay, so Cedric Coward is instantly injured. We didn't see him in Summer League whatsoever. And not only did we not see Cedric Coward, and Cedric Coward is coming into the NBA injured, which is not a great sign for any young player, the Grizzlies traded away that 16th overall pick, in which became Young Hansen, who lit up the Summer League. And I understand the Summer League isn't everything, but Young Hansen, there's definitely something to his game. All right, Young Hansen is easily a player we could see be that next great big man. Okay, maybe not Nikola Jokic. How many times will I mention Nikola Jokic during this live? But ultimately, Young Hansen could be a player in which is around for quite a while, playing valuable minutes with the Portland Trailblazers. And the Grizzlies traded not only that pick away, right, the 16th overall pick that became Young Hansen, but they also traded away a future first round pick for the rights to draft Cedric Coward. Okay, Cedric Coward, who is injured. So far, that trade is not looking too great for the Grizzlies. So far. Now, it's only a month into the trade, so there are a lot more months on the horizon to figure out whether or not that trade was actually worth it for the Grizzlies. But so far, the Grizzlies traded one of the better players at Summer League and a future first round pick for a player who's been dealing with a shoulder injury since last November. That's a little concerning. Okay. That's a little concerning for the Grizzlies up front. Otherwise, if you're not considering that move, I like the Grizzlies draft. All right. Cedric Coward at number 11. That was a player who rose up the draft boards. A lot of teams liked him, and he definitely, if you look at his game, looking on film, he looks like a modern day NBA player. He looks like a modern day wing. As for Jemai Mashak at 59, normally not giving out awards for second round picks and not giving out awards for particularly late second round picks in the 50s. This 59th overall pick was the last pick in the draft. So Jemai Mashak, congrats, Mr. Irrelevant, because the New York Knicks in the second round actually forfeited their pick. So there was no 60th overall pick in this year's draft. And so, therefore, 59th overall was the last pick, and it was Jemai Mashak. And I believe the Grizzlies took a nice swing there with Jemai Mashak at 59th overall. I mean, Mashak was likely going to find himself a home as an undrafted free agent, but the Grizzlies secured him at 59th overall. Tennessee guy, stays in the state of Tennessee, moves from East Tennessee to West Tennessee, right? Going from Knoxville over to Memphis. But that was a nice swing there at 59. Okay, I got to say, it was a little surprise. It came up, oh, Jemai Mashak. So, the Grizzlies 11. I like Cedric Coward. Okay, I like that pick for the Grizzlies, and you could even say too the Grizzlies. There's a lot of, their wing depth has been a little questionable the last couple of seasons. The Grizzlies selected Zaire Williams as a top prospect years ago. We all know the Zaire Williams situation didn't work out in Memphis. Now he's with the Brooklyn Nets, and the Grizzlies essentially traded him for nothing. They turned a top pick into nothing. But Zaire Williams was supposed to be that forward for the Grizzlies that is part of their starting rotation into the future with Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. Now Cedric Coward slots in the rotation. He could very much be that starting small forward or the smart starting three on the Memphis Grizzlies. So you have, Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 4, Ja Morant at the 1. You're gonna have maybe Zach Edey at the 5, and you could have Cedric Coward at the 3 there. And all of a sudden, that lineup starts looking a little formidable for the Grizzlies when you project out into the future, especially with the young guys getting better and better. And so, therefore, the Grizzlies, Cedric Coward at number 11. That's a nice ad for the Grizzlies. Now, considering the trade, that trade could look bad in time for the Grizzlies. Oh, you gave up a future first round pick to move up to draft a player who wasn't healthy, and you also gave up Jan Hansen in the process, or at least the pick that turned into Jan Hansen. That could look bad for the Grizzlies in time. However, just looking at the personnel in which the Grizzlies came away with on draft night, Cedric Coward, Javon Small, and Jemai Mashak, we're looking at Coward primarily. The Grizzlies won on draft night because they ultimately made their team instantly better. Okay, Cedric Coward, he's just going to make the Grizzlies instantly better if he actually plays, that is, which we all know. Availability is the best ability. Going down the list, the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans, they are easily, for me, in the loser criteria. Okay. Number one, the New Orleans Pelicans landed questionable prospects. They took swings at value spots, number two. And number three, did they make the team better? I think they did. I think the Pelicans did. So ultimately, the Pelicans did make their team a little bit better, but looking at who they drafted, they landed questionable prospects and took swings at value spots. Okay, so they took questionable swings. And here's who the Pelicans drafted: 7th overall, Jeremiah Fears; 13th overall, Derek Queen. Those are the two players we're looking at primarily. And then 40th overall, Micah Peavy. That being said, the New Orleans Pelicans, 7th and 13th, somehow, some way. I mean, Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, I pinpointed those two players as I would not I wouldn't touch them in the top 15 of the draft. I really wouldn't. Derek Queen, maybe considering, around 13th. Yeah, that's fine for Derek Queen, but then you consider what the Pelicans actually gave up for him, that future first round pick, that unprotected future first round pick. Just a terrible, terrible move for the Pelicans in that regard to actually get Derek Queen. And Derek Queen, again, a questionable prospect along with Jeremiah Fears. The Pelicans took swings at value spots. They came up with questionable prospects, and you can't make it up. The Pelicans last year, awful injury luck to their team. And yet, 13th overall, Derek Queen comes in and immediately tears a ligament in his wrist at Summer League and will now be out 3 months. So, and on top of that, Jeremiah Fears didn't look all that great at Summer League. So the Pelicans, they're clear losers and they fit into the loser criteria in multiple spots. Landed questionable prospects and took swings at value spots. That was certainly the New Orleans Pelicans. We talked about them a little bit earlier with how they traded away that 2026 unprotected future first round pick for Derek Queen. But that is that. So, I mean, it's multiple levels of this. Jeremiah Fears at number 7. And then you could say alone, Fears and Queen, 7 and 13. Those are two players that pretty questionable. I don't know about those guys in general, right? Derek Queen for the spot, right? 13th. That's not egregious. I had him somewhere around there in the draft, but I wouldn't have. He wasn't my favorite prospect in the world. I went a little lower, right? But Queen and Fears, already questionable prospects, but then you add on to that, the Pelicans gave up a 2026 unprotected first to land specifically Derek Queen at 13. It's multiple levels of why this draft night, the 2025 NBA draft, was a loss for the Pelicans. Okay, they arguably, I don't want to say they made their team worse, but they didn't. I don't know if the Pelicans necessarily furthered their future as much as they wanted to on this draft night. And that's the gist. Moving on, the Houston Rockets, they're losers on draft night, but you could say they're almost winners too because they didn't have a draft pick. Okay, so there's nobody to analyze here with the Rockets. They own the 10th overall pick in the draft, in which was Phoenix's. However, they traded that pick back to Phoenix for Kevin Durant. So you could say, oh, the Rockets, they didn't have a first round pick or they didn't have a pick at all. Yet they traded away that pick for Kevin Durant. That's a clear win. They're saying, yeah, that's a clear win for the Rockets. But also, if we're gonna go and refer back to the criteria list and refer to, did the Rockets add anything on draft night? No, they didn't. They traded away their pick for Kevin Durant. That's a great ad, right? Well, that's a win for the Rockets. But as for actually picking a player on draft night and making their team better, the Rockets didn't. So they're just going to be losers on draft night. And again, the loser category, I'm not saying, all these teams botched their picks and they're clear losers and they got worse. Nope. I'm just saying, did they capitalize on making their team better on draft night? We went over the criteria, but the Rockets, they didn't have a draft pick. Simple as that. San Antonio Spurs, clear winners on draft night because of two reasons. Landed a surefire prospect in Dylan Harper. And not only that, they made their team instantly better with the selection of Carter Bryant at 14th. Also Dylan Harper at second, but Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant, that is a almost miracle draft for the Spurs. We all knew Dylan Harper was going to be there for the Spurs at number 2. That's who they went with. But then number 14, Carter Bryant, I wouldn't say he fell necessarily in the boards, but he was certainly a prospect I personally was looking heavily at that point in the draft, and somebody that could have came in with any team and made their situation instantly better. And yet the Spurs, they land Dylan Harper second overall, surefire prospect, and then come back at 14th and land Carter Bryant, who's going to be good with the Spurs. Okay, I question his offensive game a little bit, but defensively, right? Defensively, Carter Bryant is certainly there, versatile wing, and San Antonio, if you look at their entire situation, or rather, um, Carter Bryant, Carter Bryant in San Antonio with the Spurs at Summer League, I mean, he showed a little bit of that defensive prowess. I mean, he definitely was a player pinpointed by a lot of people on social media and everybody out there as, ooh, this guy, I mean, he could come in and certainly create sparks right away. That's where Carter Bryant is. And Carter Bryant, he would have been a great pick alone. Yet the Spurs also landed Dylan Harper, who was a surefire prospect at the top of the draft. So the winner criteria landed a surefire prospect, the Spurs did. But they also made their team instantly better with their picks, came away with the top pick, and even added multiple, and again, added multiple players of value. Mentioned that earlier under the winner criteria. But the Spurs, they did add multiple players of value, and that would be Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant. Okay. Those two players right there. Going down the list, the Dallas Mavericks next. Okay, we should really spend 2 seconds on this. Cooper Flag, first overall, winners. Congrats. Dallas Mavericks move on. Didn't make another draft pick. Cooper Flag is absolutely amazing. I should really take this time to glaze Cooper Flag for what he did in the summer league. Only played 2 games, played over 30 minutes in both games. Okay, I love that. All right, I mean, like, come on. Applause for Cooper Flag. I absolutely love the fact Cooper Flag played over 30 minutes in 2 straight games. You don't see, and now he was shut down after that, I understand. But you don't see that out of top prospects. You don't see top prospects, specifically the top prospect in the draft. You do not see that go out. You don't see those type of players go out and play the amount of minutes Cooper Flag did in his first 2 games at Summer League. First game was a little not the best performance. Cooper Flag admitted that after the game. We all saw it in his numbers. But the second game, Cooper Flag absolutely dominated against a team that he'll be playing for the next X amount of years in the Western Conference. The San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama and Dylan Harper. I mean, that was a big time game. It was an afternoon game in Las Vegas at the Thomas and Mack Center. The number 1 and number 2 picks going up against each other. Dylan Harper and Cooper Flag was the first game Dylan Harper had played in months, right? Dating back to all the way back when Rutgers was eliminated, right? Cooper Flag shows out in that game and was, I mean, beyond a star. Okay, beyond a star. I mean, he if you were comparing it in relevance with the talent at Summer League, I mean, he was an all NBA player, all-star level good compared to those players. And Cooper Flag, there's gonna be some development that comes within Cooper Flag's game, but I think what we're gonna have to watch out for with Cooper Flag is the possibility he's an all-star very early in his career. I mean, the last player who was picked and instantly an all-star, that was ironically also a Dallas Maverick in Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic definitely owned a case to be an all-star his first NBA season. And it's a little, I almost feel like there's this unwritten veteran code of the league. Rookie, yeah, you're pretty good, but not quite an all-star yet. Oh, we got to give it to the veteran guys. But Cooper Flag, he's going to be playing with other all-star teammates, which is definitely going to impact his numbers and impact his status a little bit, given the fact he'll be playing with Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, whenever he comes back, of course. But Cooper Flag I mean, I would not deny he is in the running to be an all-star next season with just how great of a player he is already at his age. I mean, he is truly fantastic, and he showed it in summer league. In 2 games, shut him down 30 minutes, over 30 minutes in both games, and absolutely showed out in a big showcase game. Cooper Flag absolutely came to play in a big showcase game against the San Antonio Spurs and Dylan Harper at Summer League. There's something to be said about that. And there's a lot of great things to say about Cooper Flag, but that alone right there, the one the one NBA, I mean, look, a month ago, Cooper Flag owned 0 NBA moments. Now there's one at Summer League, played 2 straight games, one not so great, played 30 minutes both games, and the other one absolutely dominated a team in which he'll see in the Western Conference, and not only a player he'll see in the Western Conference picked right after him, Dylan Harper. So big time stuff for Cooper Flag there. Probably didn't need to spend that much time on Cooper Flag. We all know the Mavericks are winners, but had to give some praise for our guy from New England. All right. Cooper Flag from New England, from Maine, our guy from Maine. And no, it's not Griffin. right? Our guy from Maine. It's usually Griffin. Nope, this is Cooper Flag. The next team here, the Minnesota Timberwolves, total winners on draft night. All right, and here's why: Joan Behringer at 17. That is a great value pick for the Timberwolves. I don't think he's going to make their team instantly better right away, but he's playing behind some guys, Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, who could really, I've always been skeptical of the Timberwolves as a developmental organization, but looking at the establishment the Timberwolves are starting to build within their coaching staff and with their roster, I like Joan Behringer. I like his position with the Wolves because you're thinking, well, maybe in time he's the Rudy Gobert replacement, right? And they're both Frenchmen too, so there's going to be some ultimately in the locker room. There's going to be some camaraderie from that standpoint because they could both be on the French Olympic team in time, playing the same position as well. So people forget that too. Big men. They work with other big men and all that, and guards, wings. They all do that, right? And Behringer at 17 you could start seeing him as a maybe replacement for Gobert in time. And personally, I think he was one of the better bigs in the draft, Behringer, and the Timberwolves snatched him up at 17. And now that's around the range I thought he was going to go. But you could have made a case he goes even sooner than that. Yet the Timberwolves, when their pick comes around at 17th, in which the Timberwolves, let's point this out too, the Joan Behringer pick at 17th overall, the Minnesota Timberwolves selected at 17th overall because they received the Detroit Pistons 2025 first round pick, in which belonged to the New York Knicks previously, who traded that pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Karl Anthony Towns deal. So, this is very much part of the Karl Anthony Towns deal coming through, the returns part of it coming through, and the Timberwolves Joan Behringer, 17th overall, you can add him onto the Karl Anthony Towns trade and who the Timberwolves actually received for Karl Anthony Towns. Behringer is now on that list, and I think he's going to make an impact with the Wolves in time. Maybe not instantly, but certainly in time, Behringer could be that player. At 45, I'm going to poke a little fun here at one of our CTW crew members, Mr. Nick Franco. Rocco Zakarski, 45th overall. I would say Franco. I'm just going to give it out for Franco right now. Franco would certainly would put his stamp of approval on this selection at 45th overall. Rocco Zakarski was a player Franco was on basically the entirety of last season. Okay, forget the offseason, forget the draft time. All of last season, Franco was on Rocco Zakarski. Okay, and Rocco Zakarski goes one selection before the Celtics selection. He goes 45th overall, right in front of the Celtics 46th overall pick. But Zakarski at 45 overall, at 45th overall rather, I'm going to go ahead and say Franco. He would put a stamp of approval on that one. So the Timberwolves took a nice swing there, and I think they landed a player at 17th who is going to make their team better in time. And you could say the Timberwolves in the winner criteria, added multiple players of value, made their team better, and took an explainable swing. Okay, and you could say swings. The thing with Behringer is, I think Behringer can play right away. It's just I don't think he will in the Timberwolves. All right, we're almost concluded here. This is insane how long we've gone on with this, but we're going to keep going. The Oklahoma City Thunder. Clear winners because let's face it, folks. First of all, 44th overall, Brooks Barnhizer. There was actually at the Summer League, Brooks Barnhizer was pretty good. Okay, so 44th overall, the Oklahoma City Thunder select a player who was actually pretty good at the Summer League in Brooks Barnhizer. And not only did they land Brooks Barnhizer, but they also landed Thomas Sorber, 15th overall, who could be a big in the future for them when Isaiah Hartenstein, his contract, when there's a fork in the road with Isaiah Hartenstein's contract in time, Sorber might be there to take over that role. And Sorber, he's a player that rose up the draft boards. Now he is dealing with a foot injury that should concern a lot of people because bigs and foot injuries don't exactly match, right? But Thomas Sorber, 15th overall, rose up the draft boards. He was originally a late first round pick. I mean, a lot of people were talking about, could the Celtics could the Celtics pick Sorber at pick number 28? And ultimately, Sorber was nowhere near that pick. I mean, 15th overall for the Thunder It's a little bit of a swing, but it's an explainable swing for the Thunder. And I would almost say that the Thunder, is it a surefire top pick? No, but they landed somebody who was highly regarded in the mid tier of the first round. The Thunder, they just won the championship. And the Thunder just won the championship and added a player one pick outside of the lottery. Anytime you do that, you're just going to be a winner in the draft. Okay, you're going to be a winner. That's just as simple as that. Sorber and Barnheiser. Barnheiser was great in the summer league, 44th overall pick, and Sorber didn't play in the summer league, but there's definitely some hope that he can be their big of the future beyond the championship window right now, or even extend. Like, let's face it, he could be a part of why the Thunder extend their championship window in the future. That's very much a possibility. Going down the list here, how many teams? How many teams? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams left. Here we go, folks. 8 teams. Oh, 8 teams. Less than 33% of the league left. The Portland Trailblazers, clear winners on draft night for me because number one, Jan Hansen, one of the better players at Summer League. The Trailblazers have to be absolutely over the moon with that pick. And not only that, the Blazers, they trade away 11th overall, right? They trade away the 11th overall pick for Jan Hansen and a future first round pick. Jan Hansen at 16th overall looked like a complete swing for the Blazers on draft night. Yet now, looking at Jan Hansen after the summer league, he's certainly all. I mean, that pick looks genius. I mean, 16th overall, you're going. What, Jan Hansen? This man was supposed to go in the second round. He's going 16th overall. At the time, that was seen as, whoa, this is pretty high for Jan Hansen. Yet he comes out and plays in the summer league, and all of a sudden the Blazers look like they know what they're doing when it comes to scouting draft prospects. Okay, so the Blazers, they land Jan Hansen, who they have to be surely excited about right now, and they pick up a future first. That's a win. Okay, that the Blazers, they made their team better. They took an explainable swing at the end of the night, and they picked up a future first round pick for a play. Like, Jan Hansen might be better than Cedric Coward, period. Okay? Jan Hansen might be better than Cedric Coward, period. And yet the Blazers, they received the better player in the trade with the Grizzlies on top of a first round pick. That's essentially what happened with the Dyson Daniels and DeJounte Murray deal. I mean, the Hawks, they received Dyson Daniels, who is now considered better than DeJounte Murray, yet the Hawks also received Larry Nance and picks on top of that. That's where the Blazers are right now with the Memphis Grizzlies and the trade both of those teams made on draft night. Now, again, a lot of time for that trade to play out and things to happen in time. But I would say so far, not looking amazing for the Memphis Grizzlies. As for the Denver Nuggets did not pick a player on draft night, so they are just going to be definitive losers when you don't pick a player. And the Nuggets, I could go down the list of what the Nuggets turned their first round picks into. The list is very lengthy, but I can assure you the Nuggets traded their first round pick away for, look, they traded away a lot of first round picks for maybe mediocrity, right? Maybe players who, yeah, they're okay within the Nuggets rotation, but what's going on here, right? But the Nuggets, I would say that first round pick ultimately went towards their rotation. And one could say, mediocrity or not, looking at some parts of their rotation. But it's almost the same conversation as the Rockets. Like, okay, you don't have a first round pick, but you used it, or no picks at all, but they used it to further their rotation, which is good. But the Nuggets, no draft picks in 2025. So we're gonna have to put them into the loser category. All right, just no draft picks. That's it. That's simple. Simple as that. Simple conversation. The Utah Jazz. as we move on. The Pacific Northwest, the Northwest Division, right? The Northwest Division, right? We got the Northwest. We got the Southwest Division, the Northwest Division. We have the Pacific Division coming up here. But the Utah Jazz rounding out the Northwest Division. Fifth overall, the Jazz drafted Ace Bailey. 18th overall, the Jazz selected Walter Clayton Jr. And 53rd overall, John Tonje. The Jazz are clear winners on draft night from the standpoint they selected a surefire top prospect in Ace Bailey, a surefire top prospect who actually fell to them at fifth overall. You could have argued Ace Bailey was, at a certain point this season, a lot of people were arguing Ace Bailey to be the maybe second overall pick, the second best player in the draft. You could still argue that to this day. Yet, doesn't go second, doesn't go third, doesn't go fourth because of all the pre-draft hoopla. No, I'm not working out for this team, and I blah. Well, Ace Bailey, because of all that, falls to the Utah Jazz. Lost a little bit of money falling to the Utah Jazz at number 5. And not only did Ace Bailey lose a little bit of money, he's now not on the East Coast either. So, not playing on the East Coast and lost money. But he's playing with the Utah Jazz, who actually, as an organization right now, don't really have a clear direction other than their young. I mean, their direction is very much develop the young talent, but as a team, the Utah Jazz, I would be shocked if the Utah Jazz are not 15th overall in the Western Conference next year, 15th in the standings. That being said, the Utah Jazz did win on draft night because they took an explainable swing, 18th overall with Walter Clayton, and they landed a surefire top prospect at number 5 in Ace Bailey. And you can't blame the Jazz for either one of those picks right there. And I actually think you could easily see Bailey and Clayton turning into premier rotation players and even starters for the Jazz in time. That's how good those players could be in the NBA. And you never know. The Utah Jazz, if Ace Bailey doesn't work out, Walter Clayton, what if he's the best player they drafted? Right? That's certainly a possibility with the Jazz, but they are clear winners on draft night from my perspective. As for this next team, they're also winners. The Los Angeles Lakers. I hate to announce anytime a Lakers win. All right, we've done post games on here where we've had to unfortunately cover Lakers wins before, but the Lakers, they won on draft night. Why? Because they took an explainable swing at 36th overall when they drafted Adu Thero. Adu Thero was definitely a prospect that when the Celtics pick came around at 28th, I was going, okay, maybe Adu Thero. Just saying, like, just throwing him out there. I wasn't completely on the Adu Thero train, but I was, monitoring, looking at the ticket prices. All right, what's going on here? Adu Thero, he's going to be able to come in with the Lakers and make an instant impact. I question the offensive end of the floor. Not a lot of offensive game. All right, he's a player. If you want him to put the ball on the floor, if you want him to shoot the ball, I question that a little bit. But defensively, there's a lot of versatility there, and that's where he's going to make his bread in the NBA. And offensively, there's some good stuff from Thero when it comes to cutting and finishing around the rim. Those are certainly some bright spots to his game. But ultimately, defensively is where he's really gonna shine. And the Lakers at 36, when you're picking around that mark right there, in which the Lakers actually traded up for that 36th overall pick, picking a Duke Thero, that is an explainable swing. He could have been a first round pick, turns out to be a second round pick, and goes to a team that didn't have a first round pick in the Los Angeles Lakers. So the Lakers, they added some value. They made their team a little bit better, maybe with a Duke Thero. I do question how much he's going to play with the Lakers, but I think defensively, looking at the Lakers, if they're a mess defensively next season, maybe he can provide a spark off the bench at times for that team. That being said, I would say the Lakers won on draft night because that explainable swing on Thero. Unfortunately, the Lakers got to pinpoint them as winners. But the other Los Angeles team, the Los Angeles Clippers, I would say they're tough because 30th overall, Yannick Conan Niederhauser, all right, and 50th overall, Kobe Sanders. With Niederhauser, let's see. Okay. Did they land questionable prospects? Not really. Did they take swings at value spots? Not really. They make their team any better? Not really. I mean, I wouldn't put the Clippers in the loser criteria. I would put them more so in the winner criteria from took an explainable swing with Niederhauser. I like Niederhauser. I think he could make their team better instantly. He could be a legit third big man for that team. He's going to be maybe a little raw for them initially, but playing behind Zubac, playing behind Brook Lopez, I absolutely love that system for, I love the gathering of players for Yannick Cohn and Niederhauser to learn under, right? Lopez and we're losing names here. Zubac and Lopez, right? It is 2 in the morning, folks. That's why we're losing names. It's 2 in the morning. I was like, so Brook Lopez and Zubac, I think they're going to be able to take Niederhauser under their wing and kind of coach him up, and I think they're going to be able to bring him to a level. Maybe not them, obviously solely, but their veteran mentorship with him in the lineup as well in the rotation. I think I think Yannick Conan Niederhauser, I think he's going to be an all right big in the league in time. I think he has the intangibles. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Clippers are winners on draft night because they drafted a player in which is going to learn behind veteran players who are already at his position, and I think they took an explainable swing at 30. I wouldn't say it was a swing. Like that was kind of around Niederhauser's range. And you could say he maybe even went a little early in some people's opinions. But the Clippers go with him at 30. I do like Niederhauser as a prospect, and I think he falls into a nice situation. Let's face it. When you fall into a nice situation, that's what people forget about with a lot of these prospects is what kind of situation are they falling into, right? You might like a prospect, but then all of a sudden they land with the Chicago Bulls or they land with the Hornets or they land with the Kings, right? For years it was, oh, you land with the Timberwolves as well. The Timberwolves are getting better in that aspect, but there are a lot of franchises who have botched players' developments over time, right? And ultimately the situation a player falls into matters. Okay. It just simply matters. And Niederhauser falls into a nice situation. Good coaching staff, great veterans around him to potentially learn and develop under in time with Niederhauser. So great situation there. And I would term the Clippers as winners. As for the Golden State Warriors, I'm going to go ahead and say the Warriors are losers on draft night from the standpoint they only picked 52nd overall and 56th overall. They came away with Alex Tuhey and Will Richard. Okay, Alex Tuhey, he's coming over from the NBL, played over in Australia, and then Will Richard just won a national championship with the Florida Gators. When you pick in the low 50s, or rather the 50s, the low second round, right? 52nd, 56th overall, and you didn't do anything else with your offseason, and you kind of needed, I would say with the Warriors right now, look at their roster, right? You have, if Al Horford joins the Warriors, you have four former All Stars who maybe Steph Curry is going to be, Steph Curry is the only current All Star. Everybody else, former, right? Jimmy Butler, former. Draymond Green, former. Al Horford, former. They haven't made the All Star team the last couple seasons. Steph Curry, still a current All Star. But you have four players, if you're the Warriors, who are all going to be over the age of 35 leading your team. At this point in time, the Warriors maybe should start investing in their youth movement a little bit more. Okay, I understand the Warriors want to get every single drop and ounce they can get out of Steph Curry and Draymond Green and now Jimmy Butler, but you got to start maybe supplementing that roster with a couple of young pieces to prepare for the future, if not prepare for the present too. If you have some good young players who turn into something, all of a sudden those are key players on your roster who are contributing and producing for a championship level team. The Warriors didn't achieve that in the draft. Okay. Tuhey and Richard late in the second round. It would have been nice to see the Warriors maybe move up in the second round a little bit, or maybe even own a first round pick and pick in the first round. Okay. The Warriors, they're facing an age crisis. Okay. They're it's arguably already in front of them, right? Still have Steph Curry and Draymond Green, even Jimmy Butler, but they're all over the age of 35. And how much longer? And I even say right now, okay, the Warriors Are they going to be contenders next year? I wouldn't say they're contenders because of their age. I don't care about the names, okay? Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Jimmy Butler. I know that those players have been the A tier, the platinum standard of the NBA when it comes to playoff performers. Okay? Jimmy Butler, certified playoff performer. Steph Curry, certified playoff performer. Draymond Green, certified playoff performer. Specifically Green and Curry, champions, right? And Jimmy Butler, an Eastern Conference champion, which I think actually matters more than people understand. To win a conference is not easy. But all these players, right? Green, Curry, Butler, all great playoff performers, but they're all over the age of 35. And they're very much giving me vibes of the 21-22 Lakers, who rounded up all the great stars of the 2010s, played them all out there on court in 2021 and 2022. And guess what? Didn't work out, right? Didn't work out because of what primarily? Their ages. Okay. They were simply older than everybody else. Other teams were quicker, faster, more athletic than them. And the Warriors, that's part of what hampered them in the series against the Houston Rockets last year. The Warriors took a 3-1 lead, and all of a sudden they're playing a game 7 against the Rockets. It was due to that youth motivation, but also that athleticism, that quickness, that speed. The Warriors, I want to see them get a little bit younger. All right, I don't feel as if they achieved what they should have achieved on draft night when it came to maybe let's add a young piece or two. 2A and Richard, they're not those pieces. Maybe miraculously one, if not both of them, could become young pieces with the Warriors, but you're not betting on it. Okay, you're not betting on it. And that's why the Warriors are clear losers on draft night. Didn't really make their team any better, and especially considering their circumstances, didn't capitalize on a transactional window where they could have made their team better in the future, not only next season, but seasons beyond that. Okay, when Curry and Draymond Green are inevitably gone. Okay, and Jimmy Butler, throw him into the mix. Moving down the list to our last two teams. Number one, the Phoenix Suns. They are clear winners on draft night because number one, they landed a surefire prospect who fell to them at number 10, Kamen Malawach. That was a surprise. I was looking at Phoenix on draft night going, ooh, they'd really like it if Malawach fell to them at 10. And that is exactly what happened. Phoenix went ahead and made that selection, secured their big man of the future in Malawach. And not only did they do that in the second round, 31st overall, Rasheer Fleming. Some could argue Rasheer Fleming should have went in the in the first round, not only in the first round, but the mid tier of the first round, right? And Rasheer Fleming could have gone middle of the first round, drops down the board, and falls to the Phoenix Suns at 31st overall, first pick of the second round. And that's an explainable swing. I mean, that's a player who fell. That's a player who looks like an NBA player. Okay, he looks like a role player who could make an impact on teams in time. So Malawach, Fleming, and even Kobe Bryant at 41st overall. Some people, people like him out of Kentucky as well. But the Suns, they have to be winners on draft night from the standpoint of they landed a surefire top prospect in Malawach. And not only did they do that, they took explainable swings elsewhere when it comes to Rasheer Fleming and even Kobe Bryant at 41st overall. And you'd have to say, too, the Suns made their team instantly better. The Suns they didn't, they, the Suns were lacking a true big man the last two seasons. I mean, Yusuf Nurkic wasn't really getting the job done for him. Let's face it. Okay, they needed a little bit more than Yusuf Nurkic in this modern day of NBA basketball, and yet the Suns pick up arguably one of the best big men, if not the best big man in this year's draft class. And just anytime you do that, right? Like the Lakers too. I hate to extend the conversation on the Lakers, but the Lakers they didn't. But the big man situation in Los Angeles was well documented last season. Okay, the Lakers in the first round they instantly met a crisis when they had to play the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round, who rostered Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, great big men in their own right. I know Julius Randle not as much of a big man, but still a bigger player who plays as a bigger player, right? But the Timberwolves were a terrible matchup for the Lakers, and the Lakers didn't have any big man, and the Lakers were even reluctant to play Jackson Hayes in that series, right? So the Lakers' big man troubles were very much documented, even the Mark Williams situation and everything that went down with that. And the Lakers came out this summer, and what did they do? They landed the best big man on the free agency market in DeAndre Ayton. I mean, DeAndre Ayton, he was the best big man available because of his buyout in Portland. The Lakers land him. And it's one of those situations you look at and go, well, what exactly, what more could they have done? Right? The Lakers, they landed they landed the best big man in the free agency market. This is the same conversation with the Phoenix Suns where I go, look, they didn't have a big man last season or a reliable big man. Same conversation with the Lakers. Lakers didn't have a reliable big man. Lakers go into the summer and they land the best big man in free agency. Well, the Suns, they didn't have a reliable big man last year. They go into the summer and land the best big man within the draft. There's not really much more you could do, right? You land the best big man in the draft, you land the best big man in free agency. That should supplement your big man core, right? Or at least give you the starting big you need, whether you're the Suns or the Lakers in this conversation. And that's where the Suns were on draft night. I mean, they drafted the best big man when they needed a big man, and they came away with Malawach. And then afterwards, they followed it up and picked Rasheer Fleming and Kobe Bryant, who were nice swings. So you have to term the Suns as winners. I also keep saying draft night. Let's make it clear, folks. The draft night was 2 nights this year. All right, been 2 nights the last couple of years. The 2 draft nights. Keep saying one night, but 2 draft nights. As for the last team on our list, as we didn't make the hour. Okay, if you're still sitting here watching everybody, folks, at the 2-hour mark here, no, I'm sorry. You guys don't get golf claps here. You guys get full claps. You guys get full claps here because this certainly did not this did not we did not sustain the hour threshold. Okay, let's just say that. Let's just say that right now. The Sacramento Kings, our last team though here on the list. Neek Clifford, 24th overall, and Maxime Reynaud, 42nd overall. Absolutely love the draft for the Sacramento Kings. Neek Clifford absolutely dominated at Summer League, and Neek Clifford was a prospect that we all kind of liked in the Celtics Talk Weekly circles before the on our draft previews and everything. Neek Clifford, right? And he kind of fell, right? I was surprised by when the 20s were rolling around. I was going, I'm surprised Neek Clifford didn't go more so in the 10s, right? I'm surprised he's here in the 20s. He went mid 20s and 24th overall to the Kings. And then Maxime Reynaud, he's another player who fell in the draft, 42nd overall to the Kings there. And I would say both of those picks right there, they're explainable swings that made the Kings ultimately better at the end of the night. Okay, at the end of draft night or the draft nights, right? Those 2 picks, Neek Clifford and Maxime Reynaud, made the Kings better. And I think Neek Clifford, he's going to be a really nice player. Offensively, he definitely has a lot of game to him on that end of the floor. And then defensively, I think he can be a pretty versatile player for the Kings in time. So Neek Clifford, very intriguing player for the Kings. As for Maxime Reynaud, staying in state, staying pretty close to where he was, Stanford. He went to Stanford, and now he's going to be traveling to Sacramento to play, so not too far away there. But Reynaud, he's a player that dropped a little bit on the boards. A lot of people liked him as a big man. Very Porzingis-esque. Okay, that was the comparison of Reynaud coming in. And Reynaud, I would say, for the Sacramento Kings, looking at their entire organization, I mean, could he be a big man? Looking what's Sabonis' status in the future? Could Reynaud be a big that starts for the Kings in the future? Very much so. The only thing that concerns me, obviously, about these picks, they landed with the Sacramento Kings. If Neek Clifford and Maxime Reynaud landed with the team like, let's say, the Nuggets or Thunder or Mavericks or let's see, other teams, just the Pacers, right? The Magic, the Heat, the Celtics, right? Those teams, those competent squads, I would feel a lot better about Reynaud and Clifford. But hey, they land with the Sacramento Kings. You land with who you land with, and that does matter. I will say the landing spot, we talked about it earlier, definitely matters. But the Kings, even though they're a questionable destination for any prospect, they landed two nice players in Nick Clifford and Maxime Reynaud. Folks, rejoice. We've made it through this entire NBA. We went through every single NBA draft pick and every single team in the last 2 hours. I thought, like, come on. We thought, oh, it was going to be a 1 hour special. No, that's not how we do it around here. If we really want to get into detail, if we really want to give out, right? Celtics Talk Weekly. The thing that we really want to give out to people is quality. Okay, quality. We don't want to be, well, for lack of a better term, stupid. Okay, we don't want to be stupid with our content. All right, we don't want to give you guys false information. We don't want to be out here on the streets and asking people stupid questions. We don't want to be, we just don't want to be, we don't want to be in clickbait culture. All right, we don't want to be in clickbait culture. We don't want to be in the culture of Kendrick Perkins at ESPN and Stephen A at ESPN and just ESPN in general. Hey, respect ESPN, the network, everything, right? But ultimately, their content machine and their plan for their content machine, we don't like to be like that. We're not like that at Celtics Talk Weekly. All right, we're just not. We're simply not built in that manner. As I'm sorry, folks, I was supposed to have the ticker rolling this whole time of all the draft picks. We've been stuck on a couple this whole time. But regardless, what I was going to say here about Celtics Talk Weekly is we want to be a program that brings actual legitimate knowledge and information to the public. All right. We don't want to be a bunch of click farmers. We don't want to be a bunch of clickbait junkies. We don't want to be a bunch of reporters who are reporting on nothing and just giving out statements and disguising them as reports. And we just don't want to be in the crowd of non-substantive content. All right, unsubstantive content. We don't want to be in the world where you click on our stuff and you go, "Oh, there's just not much here." We want to teach you guys something. We want to bring information to your guys's screens. Okay, we want to provide clarity when it comes to the NBA and every single team and player that resides in the NBA. Okay, not only that, maybe some other sports too every now and then. Sometimes we talk about baseball, and I'm sure the football season will spark up some conversation, but primarily we are a basketball program, and we are about bringing the best content to everybody out there in the universe. Let's face it, I'm broadcasting to the entire world right now, or rather, one or two people at the top there. But that is going to do it for us here on CTW Live. I don't think, anytime we go 2 hours here, I go, is there anything else that I need to hit on? Are there any other conversations? We'll talk about some other things in some lives coming up, such as the Connecticut Sun and the fact Steve Pagliuca bought the Connecticut Sun. We're going to talk about that in the future. Don't get me wrong, a lot of great subjects to still talk about at this time of year, and we're going to spread them out a little bit. There things on social media become irrelevant so quickly, but let's face it, they're still relevant in the world of the future and any timeline that comes to play in history. That being said, well, what I was going to say, I should say, is I always on these 2 hour lives, I go, oh, is there anything more I need to hit on? But if I haven't said it in 2 hours, it cannot be that important, right? That's kind of what I think about. But as we end the show here, as I prepare for that, we will be live again later in the week, as we always are. We'll be live, and Celtics Nation Rise podcast will be out, CTW podcast out as well. And that's what we got going. Everybody, do not forget though, before we sign off, do not forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel, the Celtics Talk Weekly Instagram page, and also the Celtics Nation Rise YouTube page and Instagram page as well. Also, Celtics.everyday, that's me on Instagram. You can go check me out there. A lot of great content coming your way. More so on the Boston Celtics. The NBA coverage. We're about the Celtics coverage here and the NBA coverage. on the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel. But if you want more Celtics, go over to that Instagram page, Celtics.everyday, and go like it up. Go like it up. Go follow it up. Go run up the numbers. Come on, folks. Let's get rich on here. But that's going to do it for me here on CTW Live as we close out the show. As I always say, folks, as it's 3:12 a.m. on the East Coast. Did the music just go away? What happened? What happened? Did the music... Hold up. Are we... The music go away? What? Oh, there, yep, it's back. I don't know what just happened. Okay. We're out of here, folks. It's almost 3 a.m. I'm sure y'all are tired. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you all for watching, as I always say. You guys can come back and watch more. The Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel. I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo. And of course, see you all later, folks. And go Celtics.